The sound was too small for what came after. A socket slipped. That was all. One piece of metal falling through the dark. No siren, no fire, no warning voice from the ceiling. Just a sound. Then, every man in the room stopped pretending it was a normal shift. I was part of the maintenance team at a Titan high missile site in Arkansas. Not a commander, not a man who made final decisions. I wore the suit, carried the tools, followed the checklist, and tried not to think too much about what stood inside the silo. That was easier on most days. Most days, the missile was just a shape in the corner of your eye. A tall, white wall. A machine too large to understand as one thing. You learned to look at pieces. Panels, valves, gauges, bolts, lights, labels. The human mind cannot hold the whole end of the world at once, so it holds a wrench instead. That evening began as routine. Routine is the word we use when danger has been standing still long enough to feel familiar. The air inside the complex had its usual coldness, metal stairs, concrete walls, fluorescent light, the faint hum of systems that never slept. Every sound echoed too long down. A boot on a platform, a tool laid down, a man coughing inside a suit. The missile stood beside us in the silo, silent and vertical, as if it did not care about the men moving around it. Maybe that was what frightened me most about it. Not that it was angry, that it was calm. We had done maintenance before. We had checked systems before. Men joked because joking kept the room human. Someone complained about the heat inside his gear. Someone said he wanted coffee when we got back up. Someone said the job would be over soon. Soon. That word is dangerous. It makes men hurry in small ways. It makes hands assume they know what they are doing. It makes a familiar task feel already finished. I remember looking down into the silo. The depth below the platform swallowed light. Everything down there looked farther away than it should have. Then I heard the sound. A small metallic slip. A strike. Another strike lower down. Then nothing. No one spoke. For a moment, the whole complex seemed to listen with us. A socket is not supposed to sound important. It is the kind of thing a man can hold in his palm. The kind of thing that gets lost under a workbench. The kind of thing you curse over, find, and put back in the box. But this one did not land on a workbench. It fell beside a missile. It fell into a place where small mistakes could become too large for apology. A voice said, "Did that hit?" No one answered right away. We waited for another sound. We got one. A hiss. Soft at first, almost delicate, like air escaping from a tire. Then stronger. I turned my head toward it. The sound was coming from the missile. There are sounds you recognize before your mind accepts them. I knew what a leak sounded like. I also knew what kind of machine we were standing beside. Those two facts should never have met. Someone called it in. The words moved up through the system. Tool dropped. Possible puncture. Possible leak. Possible. That was the first shield we put between ourselves and fear. Possible. We did not say disaster. We did not say explosion. We did not say the thing everyone's eyes had already started to say. A mistake had fallen 80 feet and turned the silo into a question. At first, everyone wanted information. Where was the leak? How bad was it? Was the missile stable? Could the area be entered? Could it be sealed? Could it be fixed? The questions came faster than answers. That was when I first understood that a checklist is strongest before the thing happens. Afterward, men begin searching for the line that fits the moment. If the moment is too strange, the pages feel suddenly thin. The air changed, not all at once. It became sharp, chemical, wrong. We backed away because our bodies understood faster than the orders did. The missile still stood there. That was the cruel part. Nothing looked dramatic enough. No flames, no broken tower, no red sky. Just a hiss, a smell, and men trying to decide how close the end had moved. We were told to leave the immediate area, then wait, then prepare, then stand by, then not move until further instruction. Orders did not arrive as a single road. They arrived as crossing roads. Some came from men nearby. Some came from men on phones. Some came from men who understood missiles on paper better than they understood the sound of one leaking in front of you. I do not say that to blame them. Fear sounds different through a telephone. Above ground, the evening was still Arkansas. Fields, trees, roads, houses, people eating dinner, people turning on televisions, people who knew there was a missile somewhere under the land, but did not live each hour feeling its height behind their eyes. Below ground, time changed shape. Every minute felt watched. Men checked readings. Men repeated numbers. Men argued over what the numbers meant. A decision would almost form, then dissolve into another call. Who had authority? Who could approve entry? Who could order evacuation? Who could say the missile was lost? Who could say it was not? That was the second sound of the accident, not the leak, the waiting. The long human waiting around a machine that did not wait with us. I remember standing near a wall with my gloves still on. My hands were sweating. I kept flexing my fingers, not because I needed them, but because I wanted to feel something ordinary. One of the older technicians stared at the floor. He had been around these sites longer than I had. He did not panic. That made me more afraid. A young man panicking can be dismissed. An old man going quiet is information. Hours passed. The site began to empty. People were moved back. Roads were watched. Communities nearby became part of the question, whether they knew it yet or not. A missile accident does not stay inside a fence. It enters kitchens, churches, gas stations, living rooms. It enters every sleeping child within reach of a siren. And still, down below, the missile stood, leaking, waiting, becoming more than metal. At some point, I heard someone say we might have to go back in. Not me first, not alone. A team, a controlled entry, a look, a reading, something to give the men above us something firmer than fear. No one wanted to say it out loud, but we all understood. Information had become worth risk. That is how systems speak. They do not say, go be brave. They say, we need confirmation. We need eyes on it. We need a reading. We need to know. A man can be sent into danger by very calm words. I thought of the socket again. I could see it falling in my mind, over and over. Not fast, slow, turning once in the light, touching the missile, opening a path no one could close. It was stupid to think about it that way. Metal does not choose. Tools do not betray. Gravity does not apologize. But memory looks for someone to blame, and when it cannot find a person large enough, it blames the smallest object in the room. The night grew deeper. Outside, people were being told to move away. Some understood, some did not. How could they? What language do you use for a missile that is not launching, a warhead that is not detonating, a danger that is real but not yet visible? You cannot tell a family to fear a possibility and expect them to understand the shape of it. You can only tell them to leave. The command center lights felt too bright. Faces looked pale beneath them. Coffee went cold. Phones rang. A map sat on a table, and suddenly every road on it mattered. Men who had spent their lives inside procedure now stood inside uncertainty. I remember the phrase, under control. It appeared more than once. The situation is under control. The site is under control. The weapon is under control. But control is not a sentence you say when everything is calm. You say it when you are afraid someone will notice it is slipping. Sometime after midnight, the waiting became heavier. Not louder, heavier. We knew the leak had gone on too long. We knew the missile was wounded. We knew that whatever was happening inside that silo was moving in one direction. No one said countdown, but every man felt one. A team went in. The rest of us waited. Waiting is not doing nothing. Waiting is imagining every outcome before the real one arrives. I imagined them reaching the door. I imagined the air inside. I imagined the missile still standing in the dark. I imagined a hand on a railing, a light beam across concrete, a voice over the radio trying to sound steady. Then the world split open. I do not remember the explosion as one sound. I remember losing the shape of sound. The ground struck upward. The air became pressure. Light came from somewhere it should not have been. For a second, the night outside turned white. Then everything became fragments. Dust, shouting, radio noise, metal falling. Men running without knowing where the edge of danger was. The silo had opened itself to the sky. A door made to resist the unthinkable was no longer where it had been. Debris lay across the ground. The missile was gone from its old shape. The complex was not a complex anymore. It was a wound in the earth. I remember being on the ground and not knowing how I had gotten there. My ears rang. Someone was calling names. Someone else was yelling for lights. A man near me kept trying to stand and then sitting back down, as if his body had not yet received the same orders as his mind. I looked toward the silo. There was smoke and dust and darkness. No clean lines. No tall white shape. No calm machine. Only absence. The most frightening thing after an explosion is not always the noise. It is what the noise leaves behind. We waited for the second thing. A second blast. A fire. A warning that the worst had not yet decided whether to arrive. But the nuclear fire people feared did not come. That is what the world would later want to know. Did it detonate? Did radiation escape? Was Arkansas almost erased? Those were the large questions, the public questions, the questions that fit headlines. But on the ground, the question was smaller. Who was missing? Who was hurt? Who had been inside? Who had not come back? One man would not come home. Others carried the night in their lungs, their bones, their sleep. The people outside the fence would remember evacuation, sirens, headlights, rumors, the sight of military vehicles under rural stars. They would remember being told to leave without being told enough to understand why. We remembered the sound before all that, the socket. It is unfair, maybe, that memory begins there. A whole system stood around that missile. Designers, commanders, regulations, inspections, weapons policy, Cold War fear, billions of dollars, thousands of pages. And still, when I close my eyes, history becomes a small piece of metal falling through a gap. Years later, people would explain the accident better than we could that night. They would name the complex, the missile, the date, the sequence. They would say a tool fell, a tank was punctured, fuel leaked, decisions were delayed, men went back in, the silo exploded. They would say the warhead did not detonate. They would say radioactive material was not released. They would say the system worked because the worst thing did not happen. Maybe that is true in the way official sentences are true. But I was there for the hours before the explosion. I heard the uncertainty. I watched authority move slowly through wires and phones. I saw men wait for permission while a machine built for instant destruction leaked in the dark. The worst thing did not happen, but something terrible did. And the distance between those two sentences is where memory lives. I do not think about missiles the way I did before. Before, I thought danger came from launch keys, enemy orders, maps with arrows across oceans. Afterward, I understood another kind of danger. A dropped tool, a tired hand, a wrong assumption, a rule followed too late, a question passed upward until time itself becomes the enemy. The machine was built for war, but that night it was almost undone by maintenance. That is what stayed with me. Not the size of the missile, not the size of the warhead, the size of the mistake. Small enough to hold, large enough to empty roads, large enough to make men argue for hours about who had the right to act, large enough to turn a quiet Arkansas night into white light. Sometimes, in dreams, I am back on the platform. The air is cold. The missile is beside me. Someone laughs about coffee. Someone checks a line on a page. My glove brushes a tool, and before it falls, I know. I know the sound it will make. I know the waiting that will follow. I know the sky will open, but I cannot move fast enough. The socket slips, it falls into the dark, and the whole world holds its breath. History remembers Damascus as an accident in a missile silo. I remember the first sound, a small piece of metal falling, and every man listening as if it had already struck the future.